All right, welcome back. Episode 33 of the Recap Room podcast. We're here. It's September 22nd. It's Victory Monday. To start off Victory Monday, Bears are officially 1-2. First win. I'm going to bring on Gordy at least for a few short minutes to discuss the Bears recap for this week 3. How'd they play? You have to come over here. You have to scoot. Yeah, come where I am.
Can you see me?
I don't need to be in this. Just give us the whole rundown. What do you think?
First off, I went to the game. That was the first time I've ever seen Caleb Williams live. And that was his best game of his career by far. Unbelievable game. Beat America's team, the Cowboys. Took them down. Caleb Williams, 4 touchdown passes. You couldn't ask for a better atmosphere. The Cowboys fans were leaving after the first half. They started leaving. They were going right back onto the planes, heading right back to Dallas, wherever they're from. Caleb Williams is great. The Bears' offense is great. The defense, questionable, but the city needs a heartbeat, and the Bears are that heartbeat. I can feel it. It's like boom, 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 boom.
It's a little slow,
boom.
but it's coming back.
It's coming back, and they're great. And if we move to Arlington Heights, that's going to be crazy. Imagine Super Bowls in Arlington Heights when we go on our dynasty run like the Patriots. We win 3, have a few bad years, win another 3. Caleb becomes Tom Brady, who's a vampire now, and then wins another one, and then just like lives on forever and looks like he's 35 years old for the next 200 years. Who knows? But it was a great game. I highly recommend you go to a Bears game if you live in Chicago or if you're visiting. But if you're going, do not park. It is a pain in the ass to find parking around Soldier Field. I drove to Soldier Field. That was a horrible idea. Mistake. But there's like one bar over there that's like cool for pregame. But other than that, though, it's so fun. The Bears, I don't want to say they're back, but 1-2 sounds so much better than 0-3. Like 0-3 sucks. 1-2 feels good. Feels good to get the first victory Monday, and the Packers lost. Not a big deal. Other than that, though, I'll let Cap take over. I just wanted to give you that Bears rundown. We might start adding these in just to, get some fluff in here. All right? Bear down, baby.
I like it because it warms me up. It makes me feel like, all right, I don't have to come right out of the gate firing. I'll let Gordy take care of it, and then I'll finish it off with the real business, if you will. And today's episode, I don't know what we'll title it, but it'll be what I had in mind on my good old outline here is, so you want to be a landlord. And it's going to be all things. I kind of condensed it down to my top 10 pieces of advice. So if you don't know, I'm not just a one-trick pony, okay? I am also not just a real estate broker, but I am also a real estate investor. I own a 4-unit building in the suburbs of Chicago. I won't tell you where because I don't want any of, if you follow me on social media, you probably know where it is. But regardless, I own a 4-unit property that I bought last year, 24 years old. It was my first property that I ever bought. And I'm going to give you my top 10 pieces of advice from buying that piece of property. I think what's going to be unique about this is if you're listening to this and if you're somebody with no experience, this isn't a podcast episode for people with a ton of experience owning rental properties. Let's just put that out there. If you own, I don't know, a bunch of properties, you come from a family that owns a bunch of properties, you have a lot of experience in it, probably not the best podcast episode for you because I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know, but maybe I will. So keep listening. It's more so going to be fit for the people who maybe you bought your first condo and you're thinking about moving out and you don't know if you should sell it, but maybe you want to rent it. You've thought about getting into investing in rental properties, and we're going to be specifically talking about residential, so small apartment buildings or condos or houses, whatever. So, number one, out of the gate, piece of advice that I have is do not think you're going to make a lot of money in the short term. I think social media has distorted the reality of what real estate investing is in the era that we live in now with cryptocurrency and meme coins, and you have your friend who's, buy this fart coin and it goes from a cent to whatever, and these people are making money hand over fist overnight. Real estate is not that. If you're looking for that, probably not the asset class that you should be buying into. Usually you come out of the gate and have the most problems with your property in the first 6 to 12 months because you're working out the kinks, you're figuring out all the ins and outs of it. So that's usually where people get deterred the most, is when they buy it and then they start realizing, oh my gosh, there's actually expenses that go into this and things that I didn't consider. And then they end up selling because they can't hold on long enough. And that is a very sad situation because if you hold on to real estate long enough, you tend to make money. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but it's a sure way to build wealth long term. Number 2, when you're calculating your returns on investment and figuring out if it makes sense to buy this property or not, talk with an accountant beforehand, because it's not buying real estate is not apples to apples as buying other asset classes. Real estate is, I don't want to speak out of turn, I think it's the most tax advantaged asset class out of them all. And if you talk with an accountant beforehand, they can give you a true estimate of what you're going to save on your taxes when you do buy that property. And that needs to be factored into your calculations, because if you're looking at it apples to apples between buying real estate and buying stocks or other asset classes are always going to look a lot better, because sometimes the returns, apples to apples, are better. And with a stock, you just put your money in, you forget about it. You don't have to deal with toilets breaking and tenants calling you and actual hands-on things that you have to do like you have to do with a property. With stocks, you just kind of set it and forget it. But that's also if you're just looking at it apples to apples and not taking into account that you're going to save a lot of money on taxes when you do buy real estate. So I would talk with an accountant, get a trusted tax accountant, specifically somebody that has experience in the real estate side of things. You don't just want somebody who's just a standard accountant. It's good to have somebody that has that experience working with real estate investors and can really be a strategist for you to help you save on your taxes. Number 3, always make sure to factor money in to your calculations for repairs and miscellaneous items, things that are going to come up. These are known as CapEx. Not KAPX, but CAPX. So that stands for capital expenditures. So that's things like plumbing issues, electrical issues, new roof, anything that could go materially wrong with the property, you need to factor that in. Now, everybody has their own calculation of how much they set aside. Also depends on how old the property is, the type of condition the property's in. But regardless, don't just look at it as you have to factor it in at some level. You can't just look at what you're going to collect in rent and what your monthly cost on your mortgage payments are going to be and be like, oh, there's a $500 delta. I'm making $500 a month. No, that's $500 a month before you take into account any sort of percentage for CapEx, capital expenditures, and whatever percent you decide to take, we could talk about what makes the most sense on each specific property. That's why you come to this guy when you want to buy an investment property, because I'll walk you through that process. But it's important to make sure that you're setting at least a little bit aside, because it's not if things go wrong and you have capital expenditures, it's when it happens, and you need to be prepared for that and factor that number into your equation. Number 4, cash flow will never make you rich, but you really want to be buying for appreciation. So those terms may not make any sense to you. Like I said, this is a podcast episode specifically for people who don't really know a lot about real estate investing. So cash flow, let's just put it in the most simple terms. That is your money left over each month. Your monthly cash flow would be your money left over each month after all expenses are paid, after everything's done. What is the net number that's going away in your pocket? So say you have a unit, you're renting it for $3,000 a month. Your cost all in is $2,500 a month. You have $500 a month in net cash flow. That $500, even spread over the course of 12 months, even over the course of however many years you own the property, it's never going to make you rich, unless you're unless you're somebody who's actively investing in real estate as their primary source of income and buying large amounts of real estate. That cash flow is never really going to be the thing that's going to make you rich. Just look at it as like icing on the cake. That's the way I do it with my property. I just look at it as like, oh, I made X amount of money on the property this year. I'm just going to hold that money into the bank account that the property is held in. Oh, this is a little bonus one too. I just thought of it. It's not on this 10 list, but hold your properties, all of them, in LLCs. But regardless, you open an LLC, you hold in that bank account, all your cash flow, you just keep putting in there, and you don't look at it, because that money is never going to be the game-changing money. The money that you're really going to be making on it is going to be through long-term appreciation. So that's the property over time increasing in value. That's what appreciation means. But there's also multiple ways you can get appreciation. You can get appreciation through market appreciation, but you can also get appreciation through what's called forced appreciation, and that's by making repairs, making the units nicer, and getting higher rents for each of the units, and that's called forced appreciation because you're essentially doing something to force that price of the value of the property to go up. So never look at that cash flow to make you rich. Just keep holding it in the bank account that your LLC for the property is under, and just look at it like icing on the cake. Let the appreciation long-term take care of what the real ROI on that investment is going to be. 5, this is a very, very important one, and this is one that you're probably not going to hear on most podcasts, but never tell the tenants that you own the property. So I self-manage the property. I'm the point of contact. And I was young and naive, as I still am, but I was more young and more naive when I bought this property, and I was so excited. It was my first property, and I made the mistake of telling the tenants that, reach out to me. I'm the new landlord. And that sounds fine, right? You don't think anything of it. Why would you not want to tell the tenants you own it? You're going to be the landlord. Then all of a sudden, the tenants are going to probably, depending on their view of you, some people hate their landlords always. They just have a thing out for landlords. There's always going to be a negative connotation. They're paying them money, and they're always going to have a negative taste in their mouth and make your life a living hell because they hate you. And even if that's not the case, they're just going to come to you when anything's a problem. They're going to be reaching out to you probably more than they really need to be. Whereas if you tell them, you could still tell them you're the point of contact, but you can just say, I work for the property owner, I'm the property manager, I do work around the building, whatever. You can come up with anything. You can say you're the friggin' janitor. I don't care. But just don't tell the tenants that you own the property. It will save you a lot of headache. And knowing what I know now, when I do buy more properties, I will not be sure to not make that mistake because it has definitely caused a lot more headaches. It's caused, 11:30 p.m. calls. It's caused calls from my tenants that at like 11:30 while they're drunk. It's caused headaches from just a lot of different ways that I don't think you need to be dealing with that. And it's probably going to make you hate being a landlord if you do that. So goal is to stick in it for the long term. Number 6, buy where you know, especially when you start. Make your first property ideally after you move out your first rental. When you start looking for rental properties, especially if you live in Chicago, you're going to see these monthly numbers and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're losing money on a cash flow basis in Chicago, and you want to start looking out in areas further out, maybe where the monthly numbers look a little bit more appealing. But I caution people against that because especially on your, eventually you could probably work your way to doing that. But especially when you start, you want to be able to be hands-on and learn the process. And you also don't know, like, say for example, you live in Chicago and you look out at properties in Rockford. You're like, oh my gosh, the numbers in Rockford look so much better on a monthly payment basis. My costs are lower in Rockford than in Chicago. But have you ever been to Rockford? Do you know anything about the schools in Rockford? Do you know anything about the location and the block that you're buying on in Rockford? Like, if you don't have an answer to those questions, you should not be buying in that area. You should be buying in the areas that you know. And generally, just so happens that tends to work out better because you have your boots on the ground and you know the areas that your friends are moving to. You know the hot areas that are up and coming. You know the areas that have always been stable that people always want to live in, right? So I always tell people, make ideally the first property that you live in a rental property, because if you bought it and you lived in it, you probably liked the area. You didn't buy it because you didn't like the area, I would hope. And that usually is a good starting point and entryway into real estate investing. And then some people have the strategy of they just move into a property, move out, rent out that one, same rinse and repeat, and get a pretty nice portfolio by the end of it. Number 7, Have a good team ready to go on hand if you need any repairs, if you need any maintenance checks, things like that. I did not do this very well when I first started, and then when there was any sort of maintenance issues, it was kind of like a total free-for-all, and I was having to scramble to get people to get out to the property to do those things because I'm not very handy, just is the way it is. If you're handy, go ahead and do those repairs yourself, save you a lot of money, but if not, make sure you have that team ready to go. Have an electrician, have a plumber, have a general handyman. Mainly have the people on hand for things that could be emergency repairs. You don't really need to have an emergency, guy who does remodeling because it's not really usually an emergency. Usually you have a pretty good notice that you're probably going to be remodeling a unit. Maybe the tenant says they're moving out a few months earlier and you start getting those ducks in a row. But you can never plan when your furnace breaks. And it usually is not at the most opportune times. So make sure you have that ready to go, and it'll save you a lot of headache. And I know for me, it's definitely, now that I've got that team in place, definitely saved me a lot of headache moving forward. Number 8, figure out a system for rent collection that is easy, streamlined, and everybody's on the same page about. This is a little bit more difficult if you're in an area or dealing with people that are not of the same age demographic. If you have, what I mean by that is if you have elderly tenants, if you tell them, hey, can you send me the money on Zelle? They're probably going to look at you like you have 3 heads because they've probably never used Zelle before. And if kind of the same goes if you ask an 18-year-old to write you a check, they're probably not, they could probably figure it out with the internet, but they probably don't write checks. They probably don't even have checks. So ideal world, you figure out just a way that's going to work for everybody. I tend to lean towards an electronic method of rent collection is always easiest. You don't have to be running around chasing down checks. They get lost in the mail. That's always a pain. I don't have that system set up because my tenants are not all capable of sending money electronically. But if you have the option to do it, I would highly suggest doing that. Just make sure you're not commingling the funds. Make sure you're not taking. It's very easy when you set up an LLC with a bank account with your LLC for the property. You can make a Zelle account tied to that bank account, and then you're not worried about commingling funds, which is basically just meaning that you're taking the rent collection money into your own personal account. Because that is a big no-no. You do not want to be doing that. And referring back to number 2, if you talk to your accountant, they'll tell you the same thing. So have a good system for rent collection, and it'll make your life a lot simpler, and it'll probably be appreciated by your tenants too. Number 9, do not become friends with your tenants, but you can be friendly with them. This one is a very tough one to draw the line, but you don't need to be friends with your tenants. You really should not be friends with your tenants. You can be nice to them. You can, check in periodically. You can even, if you're a really nice guy, send them something on the holidays, whatever. But what happens is when you become friends with your tenants and those lines start being blurred as to what that relationship is actually like. It's kind of like if you give them an inch, they take a mile. They will start getting a little more lackadaisical on what is expected of them. The few days late on rent turns into a week late on rent. Oh, don't worry about it. I'll get it to you, blah, blah, blah. And they think because they're your buddy, now all of a sudden they can kind of start getting a little loose on paying their rent or whatever it is. And that is the last thing you want to do because I could tell you that does not get better. Typically, when they're late on rent once, they're probably going to be late on it multiple times, and it typically gets longer and longer the amount of time that they are late on that rent because 2 days turns into a week, turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month. Then all of a sudden you have a real problem on your hands. And now, just from a human psychology perspective, because you've built that relationship with the tenants being like, oh, we're buddy, now you have to flip it and become the bad guy. They're like, what the fuck's wrong? Excuse me, bleep that out, Pat. But they're going to be like, what the heck is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? I thought we were boys. I thought we were homies. It's like, yeah, we're cool, but I'm your landlord and you owe me rent. And if you don't pay me, we have a big problem. And I ultimately am responsible for making sure this building is running and paying my bills. Because at the end of the day, if the landlord or if the tenant doesn't pay me rent, the mortgage company, the bank that I have to pay the mortgage to isn't going to be like, oh, it's all right, this month you can take off. We'll wait until you get your rent collected. It's like, no, that bank wants that money, and I want my money. So don't become friends with your tenants. Be nice to them. Always be cordial. Keep it at an arm's length. It's better that way. You have enough friends. You don't need any more. You don't need to be making friends with your tenants. And number 10, to finish off the episode, never, ever be forced to sell. The reason why people lose money in real estate is only when they sell, when they really don't want to be selling. If you hold on to real estate long enough, I mean, even look at like 2008, the worst financial real estate collapse in our country's history. If you held on to real estate from that point to now, especially in some of these locations that we work, you still came out like a bandit. The only people that got hit horribly are the people that were forced to sell their houses because the market took a downturn. It kind of ties in with all the other 9 things I said before this, because those are all just kind of like action plans to make sure that you don't put yourself in a position where you're forced to sell and you're selling on your own terms. Because that's ultimately, we buy real estate to make money. It's a business decision. That's the most important thing, like any business. If it's not profitable, it doesn't make sense. And so you want to be able to be selling on your own terms. You don't want to be forced to sell in a pinch, because that's when you are going to take the biggest hit. And that's where you hear these horror stories of these people, oh my gosh, I had to sell my property for a 50, 60% loss. Well, if you never sell, you never take the loss. You never take the gain either, but you never take the loss. So hold on for the long ride. Don't be expecting to come in making a whole bunch of money in like a few years. It's going to take a while for that profits to really start driving in. But those are my top 10 pieces of advice. Those are the most important things that I've learned as a landlord over the course of the last year and some change. And I hope this is helpful to you. If you have any interest in buying an investment property, turning your current property into an investment property, maybe you want to buy a condo, live in it for a few years, move out, and then rent that out, let's have a discussion. Like, let's just talk about it. I'll answer any questions that you have. It's really like, I enjoy talking about it. So sometimes I think people think like, I just don't want to waste your time because I don't know if I'm ready for it. It's like, you're not wasting my time. I enjoy talking about it. This is a conversation that I would have with my buddies if we were out at a bar one night and just shooting the shit. Bleep that out as well. I've been swearing a lot today. I don't know what's gotten into me. Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. But yeah, so if you're ever interested, give me a holler, give me a ring. You know where to find me. It's pretty easy. I'm pretty much everywhere these days. So as always, appreciate you watching if you've made it this far. And we love ya.